It was where? Snoopy's, like the dog, like the dog, like the dog. Hey guys, this is another random, excellent, exciting edition of AvenueChat. I'm here with my boy Hunter Nagao that I met today. I've heard quite a bit about his very broad personality and broad interest as an individual, and also a little bit about his ability to be a quote-unquote hermit of society. Yeah. Also his interest in, well, his travel across the world as a military brat, and his very interesting personality. We had a dialogue before I started recording today over introspectives in the Wiccan culture, which I found to be really interesting. He approached it from what we were talking about, auras. Mm-hmm. Well, my ignorance in what an aura is. What else was it?
Synthesia. That's my view.
Synthesia. So
it's like when you hear colors.
When you hear colors.
Yeah, synthesia is when you have multiple senses augment a certain type of memory or thought process.
Right. See,
so some people will hear music when that they associate with people's names and stuff like that. So it makes it easier for them to remember them.
That is the ultimate mnemonic device. It's like a mnemonic device, very extreme sense. Mm-hmm. Man, that's.
It does tend to help with like long-term memory.
Yeah. Do you think that could be used in like, was it Alzheimer's treatment? Just the idea or process of what that is?
Possibly, but from what I remember, it was considered a defect for a while.
Yeah, a lot of things are considered defects until people actually realize that there are benefits in things. And that's a whole another topic. But on the topic of relating to that, I kind of relate to that as a person that studied music theory or sounds for a huge majority of my life. I always quote the phrase that I can see sounds, just because frequencies and I understand them and relate to them a little bit differently than most people do. Mm-hmm. Most people call me a hippie. They assume that I smoke a whole bunch of weed because I speak about sounds very in-depthly. Especially as I venture in the field of substance abuse counseling. It
doesn't necessarily follow. I had a lot of friends who were like in band and stuff, and they had the same type of opinion.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, Nacogdoches Cigar is what is allowing me to host this podcast here today. They have graciously allowed me to come host conversations when and wherever, or whenever I choose to. It just has to be the time that's appropriate for them. So shout out to Nacogdoches and Nacogdoches Cigar for allowing me to be here present today with Hunter. And shout out to David for introducing me to Hunter. He's a cool guy.
He is.
He's a cool guy. How did you and David meet?
Walmart. We both work at Walmart. I was talking to someone else about D&D.
Okay.
Because I was running a game at that point, and David mentioned that he was interested
in D&D.
Yes.
Had he never played D&D before?
Me?
David.
No, he had never played D&D before.
Okay.
And he joined the campaign. That was it.
Okay. D&D. They were discussing D&D with me before I hopped on this podcast. I've never played D&D in my life.
It depends on the way I view it is, have you ever played a video game and gotten to a point where it really frustrated you that you saw an obvious way strategy to like fight a boss or solve some kind of problem, and the game just wouldn't allow it because the pathfinding wasn't there, or they had some kind of border set up somewhere, and you're just like, no, if I can just climb this wall, I can skip all this bullshit. Yeah, that's basically the way I approach D&D. I set up the game, I set up the world, and I let them run through. There's an obvious path that they can follow, but if they have a weird idea, I compensate for it. So it's like, oh, they skipped that wall, that monster is still there, they do this, but they'll react intelligently. So maybe if they hear the fighting come over, they come and hit them from behind. That kind of thing. I try to make the experience more realistic.
That sounds really detailed.
Much more adaptive. Yes, it is. It's a sandbox style DMing where you just build the world and let them loose.
Yeah.
And you provide some kind of framework for them to adventure and a story to follow. But it's more like playing Elder Scrolls, where you have the main storyline, but you just go off on the side thing and just do whatever.
Right.
And I have a lot of experience with that because I have a horrible time predicting people. So 90-something% of the time, my group will come in there and I'll have a whole campaign start out, and they'll ignore it. Just, that's the main boss? No, we're not going to gear up and take out his minions, get stronger and level up, and then go hunt him down. No, we're going to run away and go to a different country and just ignore him completely because he looks scary and we didn't feel like dealing with him.
So in D&D, is there just like is there like one person that sets this game up or sets this campaign up in D&D, and then everybody else comes?
Yes, that's me, the DM. In D&D, it's called the DM. In certain other games, it's called like the storyteller or whatever. Basically, or narrator. It's the same thing. My job is to run everything else. Everyone runs one character, like their character that they personify, they bring to life, and everything. And I flesh out the entire world around them. I describe the scenery. I give them the personalities of like the various characters they run into. I run the economy, the monsters, events, everything. There's a lot of rules that help with that, like random encounters. So like instead of having to simulate where all the monsters migrate, you just roll to see what wandered into the area. But yeah, you keep track of that stuff.
Wow. Okay, now I got to play D&D. I don't know when that's gonna happen. I got to figure out somewhere in Tyler I can go play it. I think there's a gaming center or something that may have it. I can go try to check that out.
I got my therapist to play D&D. It was pretty funny.
You got your therapist to play D&D.
Yeah.
How was that?
She loved it.
Yeah.
And she ended up hooked.
Wow.
And then moved in order to get closer to her gaming group, so she could game more often.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was told that as a counselor, I was told that D&D would be a therapeutic thing for me to do. I typically just work a lot. Maybe I need to not work so much and go play D&D. I don't know. Figure it out.
It's a fantasy thing. It's you get to try acting out a personality that you normally wouldn't. If you want to try being like rude and confrontational and everything, but normally in real life you're a bit more mild-mannered or just restrained by the rules of society or whatever, you can have a character who acts out more or whatever, just to get that impulse out of the way, just to see how it feels. And I have to run the reactions of the people around you, so you have a bit of an understanding of how that will end up for you if you actually try that in real life, which is usually bad. But
or usually bad, or usually just uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, truthfully, because since they're the main focus of the story, you're supposed to keep it reasonable. So they always have a chance.
Right.
So it's not like SWAT come in and just wipes them all out. It's a cop patrol shows up and they have a chance to like escape or run away or whatever if they're doing something wrong.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you find yourself in East Texas?
Ended up in Oklahoma, where my parents moved, and then my parents got an offer and they ended up moving down, like less than 100 miles down to Texas.
So Oklahoma's borders Texas.
Yeah, and from there, the place was flat, empty, desolate even. I mean, and it felt very uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Just, even when we were in Oklahoma, the area we were in had forests all around, so.
Right.
So it felt very exposed. And then when I was applying to various colleges and everything, SFA's campus gave the best impression. I mean, it was sprinkling when we showed up, like halfway through the tour, and that was actually like, we considered it fortunate at the time, and then like 2 of the students actually offered us umbrellas, like just randomly. Like they were walking down, and they're just like, "Oh, I have an extra umbrella. Here you go," and they just kept walking, and we left.
Oh, it gave you an umbrella.
Yeah.
That's
2 different students gave us umbrellas.
wow.
Yeah, and I was like, I like this place. This gave a very friendly impression and everything. I liked it. So I ended up coming here.
Do you still feel the same way about Nacogdoches?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I was like, students never actually like gave me a bad impression or anything.
Yeah.
I'm fairly introverted though, so it's not like I reacted with
Right.
a huge section. Oh, one thing that did stand out though, the year I started, I was one of only 2 Asian students, practically, on the entire campus. That was very unusual because both of us were Japanese, and the other one was named Yoshi, and everyone knew him because he was much more extroverted, since he was an exchange student from Japan.
Right.
And because of that, and we live in the same dorm. So, and because of that, by association, everyone knew me. So I got very used to walking down, walking across campus, and people just going, "Hey, Hunter," and I'm like, "I've never seen you in my life." And they're just like, "With the other Asian."
Yeah, I understand. I get that a lot.
And they're like, "Yoshi talks about you all the time," and it's like, okay.
Yeah. So did you and Yoshi, you have a friendship?
He was a workaholic.
Yeah.
So, and I'm introverted. So we were friendly, like acquaintances, but we weren't like particularly close.
So you and Yoshi are both Japanese, right?
Yes.
But you spent time in Korea?
Yeah. That's where my mom's from.
Okay.
So half Japanese, half Korean.
Okay. And do you know where Yoshi was from?
Japan. Tokyo.
Is there cultural differences between Korea and Japan?
Yes. Japan there's a lot more pressure in Japan.
Okay.
To perform.
Okay.
You compete to get into high school like you do college here.
Wow.
Like high schools are accredited, rated, have application processes, fees, all that stuff, and it's a huge deal
To get into high school?
Yes, like a lot of students can't get into it even high school, just because it's not free. Like, or they might have public ones, but they're much lower rated.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to a college, you need to perform outstandingly at a lower level one, or actually attend a better one. And particularly, a lot of times to get the better ones, both.
Right. Okay. What exists before high school? Is there a junior high?
Up to middle school.
Middle school?
Yeah. Well, junior high, but.
Okay. So then, what is it like in Korea, in compared to that?
It's been a long time since I've been back there, and from my understanding, it's changed a lot from the articles and stuff I've read. Okay. But Korea was much more laid back.
Right.
Like it was busy. Like Seoul was crowded.
Yeah.
But you could walk to a lot of places. There was a lot more like small shops and everything. Despite the fact that we lived on the edge of like a metropolis, basically, it felt much more like a small town in a lot of ways.
Small town.
The pace was slower. The stores were smaller. I mean, it was a lot. A lot of people in the neighborhood, they all knew each other. stuff like that.
Like, make sense to kind of compare it to Nacogdoches small town?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of people knew each other or were related to each other in some way, that kind of thing.
That's interesting. So the school system is not quite the same, not close to being the same, not as much pressure.
I didn't attend the upper levels in Korea, so I'm not sure.
That's right.
And I never actually studied that one as much as Japan, since I didn't know anyone from Korea at the time.
So where did you do most of your schooling?
America.
In what state?
All over. Florida, Kentucky, Virginia, and Oklahoma, and Texas.
Wow. So would you have a better sense of what American culture is, or would you have a better sense of what Asian culture is in those two perspectives, both Korean and both Japan?
Probably have a better perspective on not sure. Taking into account that like shows and stuff tend to exaggerate things and everything, there's show the more extreme version and everything. There's a chance I have more exposure to Japanese culture just from watching anime and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Just because I'm introverted, so I had a very small or very little social life in going attending to the schools in America.
Right.
That, and I was overweight as a kid.
Okay.
I was short as a kid.
Okay.
I had very good grades, and I was Asian, which meant I was often the only Asian, or one of like a handful at most.
Yeah.
I had disciplinary issues.
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had anger issues too.
Yeah. Okay. So what?
Those were normal. I always had those, but like the attempted bullying every time I moved did not help that.
Yeah, that's very true.
I got very violent.
Yeah, and you went through that hazing phase pretty often in the transition.
Like almost every year.
Yeah.
Man, that's like every year or so. I would end up with a new group of bullies that I'd have to crush.
That you'd have to crush?
Oh yeah.
Where did you adapt? Where did you learn that word in relation to the transition? The word crush. I always find it really fascinating. I always find it really fascinating. Sometimes people's word choosing on things and where they got that from, because I know they always get it from, they learned it from somewhere, or they heard someone say it, and so the connection between that particular person or the story of how they learned that word is very symbolic. You know what I mean?
4th grade is when I started applying that concept to myself. We were in line to go to lunch, and we were walking down the hall, and I was fairly new, like it was the first month or so. I don't remember his name anymore, but it was a kid who was fairly low on the social totem pole, and he was attempting to boost himself by picking on him, and he kept stabbing me in the back with a pencil, and I turned around and I grabbed his hair and I slammed his face into a concrete pillar until everything broke. Crush. And then he collapsed onto the ground, and his face was covered in blood and everything.
Crush is an accurate word.
Yeah, and then you hear that term used in sports for like a complete defeat.
Right.
And at that point I was like, that's the concept I need. I need fear. Like I need terror. I need people to think of hurting me and going, his retaliation will be so horrific that it's not worth it. And kids have very low self-preservation instincts, so you have to like mentally scar them in order to get them to remember it in a meaningful manner. Of course, that applied to me as well, because I didn't understand at the time how bad, like physically disabling someone was. Like that didn't register to me, despite the fact that I understood it applied to other people.
Yeah.
It's hard to see your own flaws.
Man, that's insane. So, a little bit Man, because I went through some bullying and some hazing in school, but so relatable, right? It's like you said, you were like one of one of a handful of Asians. In East Texas, I was probably in every school district that I went to, I was one of a handful of African American students in my grade.
Yeah, that was
every single year, right? But in East Texas, there's this stigma to where you're not really black unless you speak like you're from a poverty point area, right? So unless you speak a bunch of slang terminology or you draw your words or whatever it may be, I never fit into that mold.
Yeah.
So I always got hazed as the kid that was never understood from that perspective. You know, it's like, why do you speak like that? But the crazy thing is this, is I mainly got hazed by my own color of people. So
I've actually never had that issue.
Right. So it was I learned how to adapt very very softly, because my mom also was in education, so she taught at the school that I went to when I was a kid. I don't know if you're familiar with like geographical location of East Texas so much, but I actually grew up, I'm from Longview, Texas originally, and then I actually was raised in Liberty City, Texas, or Sabine. I don't know if you know where that is at all.
Vaguely.
It's you know where Kilgore, Texas is?
Yes.
And so it's slightly north of Kilgore, Texas.
Oh, okay.
Right smack dab in the middle of White Oak, Texas, and Kilgore, Texas.
Okay, I know what that is.
Right?
Yeah.
So Liberty City or Sabine is so small that it doesn't have its own area code. Half of it has White Oak's area code and half of it has Kilgore's area code. And I think there's another portion of it that has some other area code that's like on the way to Tyler, Texas. So, yeah, and then I moved back to Longview and I experienced the same thing. But I experienced the same thing all over again. And I was in band and I was like the quote unquote band nerd. So, you know, that added to the misunderstanding of me. So, yeah, man, those times were crazy. I often tell people that kids sometimes can be the meanest people in the world just because of their lack of understanding of what's important.
Yeah, I forgot where I read it, but they said to if you want to look at a culture and to understand how they truly think, you look at the kids. Like, you look at the kids who are around middle school age, and they're old enough to have ingrained and adapted old biases, but not old enough to like hide them correctly.
Right.
So you can see the way the culture actually is, and it's not always pretty.
Not really.
They got issues.
Yeah, there's issues. There's issues. Some of it is it's kind of like the whole what is it? Nature versus nurture concept. It's like, you know, what they get from their parents after they've been born, or what they were already have been given at the time that they were born. Man, that those things can contradict pretty greatly, and they're pretty honest, because like you said, and I would use the word coping when you said they don't know how to hide. I would say they don't know how to cope, but of course I'm a counselor, I'm gonna use that word.
Well, to be fair, for the longest time I believed everyone was a sociopath.
Okay.
And the majority of the softer emotions were fake.
Yeah, I can understand that. Give me your perspective on that. How did you end up adapting that?
I always had trouble with most of the softer emotions, like empathy, stuff like that. Bullying didn't help because, from my perspective, if empathy and all that stuff, and sympathy and all that stuff existed, then bullying wouldn't be an issue. Because why would you hurt someone if it bothers you to be hurt? Like, the only people who would be bullies would be masochists at that point, because that's the way they want to be treated, that kind of thing. And then no one else ever stepped in. So, from my point of view, just those were all lies that people told themselves, just very pretty lies that they just made up. And And I mean, like the Bill of Rights, the inalienable human rights type thing, and it's like those don't existed not historically. I mean, just yeah, the country's enforcing it, but it's not something that's actually there. It's might makes right throughout most of history, and that's how it worked. From my point of view, it was like the weak was ganging up on the strong in order to just restrain them in order to give themselves a chance, and that's the way I view most of society.
Yeah.
You got teachers to empathize with you, so they liked you enough to protect you from the consequences of your own actions, and that's about it. So you had teachers who liked certain behavior patterns. You adopted those in order for them to favor you, and then that way, when you hurt someone, they were more likely to take your side of the story. Especially if you arrange the narrative in such a way that they looked horrible, like they started everything, which they did.
This sounds like it could be one big D&D game.
My life.
No, the way you're painting the picture.
Yeah.
It sounds like anybody's life perceptually could be related to one big D&D game.
Oh, it definitely can. I mean, the rules were designed to be as flexible and realistic, if abstract as possible, to simplify everything, so you don't have to roll for a million different things.
Flexible and realistic, if as abstract.
Like in an abstract manner, like okay, so if you're trying to flirt with someone, that's a specific skill set. That's something you learn how to do. Like you learn how to read a girl, her moods. You have to learn the environment. You have to learn how to approach them, like social cues, all that stuff. That's a lot of small, different skills that you add up together in order to create one instance scenario. Whatever.
Yeah.
That's a mostly different skill set than like selling cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, but all of that under D&D is just tied under diplomacy. It's just social roles designed to make people more favorable to you, and it just covers all of that.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. They just kind of lump a lot of things together in order to cut down on a ridiculous number of rules.
Yeah. Okay. So is life more effective with more rules, or is the clumping of the rules appropriate?
Life is much more complicated than a D&D game.
Yes, it is.
It would be a lot easier for me if it wasn't.
Yeah.
If I could focus on 25 to 30 skills in my life rather than like a million, I would be a lot farther along. Like it would be very easy to succeed.
Also, I think if life was like a D&D game, it would be everything would be more consistent. You would never have to guess what's going to happen.
For a lot of things.
For a lot of things. Not everything, but for a lot of things.
The D20 is not always nice.
What's the D20?
That's what you roll to add to all the modifiers. You roll a 20-sided die, and a 1 is always a failure. So there is always a 5% chance of failing, no matter how good you are.
There's a 20-sided die?
Yeah.
This die has 20 faces.
Yeah.
I have never seen that before in my life.
I have die ranging up to 100.
In one die?
Yeah, it looks like a golf ball, actually.
And now, we're talking about dice, right? But just one singular die has 20 faces on it.
Yeah. That's a fairly standard one.
Shout out to Jonathan Hubbard. Jonathan Hubbard is a local musician here in NAC. I'm good friends with. He has a music tutoring company that's right down the street here on Main Street. And he's an avid D&D player. But he posted on Facebook some months ago. It was like different die that he had purchased from somewhere. I don't think any of them were 20-sided die. I think the most that he had was about 6 or 7-sided.
Yeah, they have D8s.
Yeah.
Or they have an 8-sided die, rather. And, yeah, they have 1, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 20, 30, 50, and 100. I think those are the ones I have.
You have.
Oh, wait, I have a 24-sided one for time of the day. And
Oh, snap. Okay.
I think that's it. I think those are a little old.
So it's hours. So is there a separate one for minutes? Maybe you have one for, because obviously the 24-sided die is military hours, right?
Yeah. I actually do that just for flavor's sake. I mean, most people just roll 2 d12s. Two 12-sided die. Easy.
So those dies are, I mean, because I've heard of people collect like collectible die, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are these collectible die, or do you use these die in D&D?
I have a box
of die.
Yeah. I don't remember its name. That's Crown Royal.
Okay.
Created this liquor at one point, like an anniversary edition.
Yeah.
And it was in this leather-bound case, and I bought it, and I used the case to hold all my die in school.
Yeah. Man, I gotta look up this 20-sided die real quick. I'm so very intrigued. This is so interesting. $20-sided die. So is D&D any game, like a game that you play that you get better at over time? Is it a game that you progress in?
Depends on how you define that. The concept of
snap! I see what you're talking about.
the core concept of the game is that you do things and you get better at them. Like you get stronger, more powerful.
Yeah.
As a person or as a character, and you get more abilities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, yes, as you play along the story, your characters keep getting stronger and better at what they do. After a very short intro, though, as a player, you tend not to have to get a whole lot better. The first campaign usually is a little bit rough because you're learning all the rules and everything. After that, though, you gain experience at it, and it gives you like small tweaks, options, and shortcuts and stuff to help fine tune stuff. But that's about it.
Okay. So, what does life look like for Hunter this day and age right now? What are you doing with your time? What fills your day?
Oh, wow. Working on campaign.
Okay.
Don't really do much.
No.
I like working on campaign.
Okay.
I do that a lot.
Like D&D campaigns?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I run one. We meet every week, and
you ever play online Dungeons and Dragons? Is that a thing? Like over Zoom or anything, or digital?
like the text one.
Yeah.
I've tried playing. It's called Play by Post a lot of times, or the live stream one. I've tried both. The live stream one works okay for me. It's better if I know them beforehand, because I get a better feel for the way they play their characters, their personality.
Right.
A lot of some of the times when I play live stream, personality conflicts arise a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a lot easier to misconstrue the way someone's saying something or whatever.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't know who they are.
Yeah. And then especially if it's through text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It removes a lot of the small social cues that you rely on.
Yeah, it's like when text messaging was even invented anyway. It's like social cues. Half the social cues that you experience get wiped away. There's no vocal tones. There's no you don't get to read facial expressions.
Body language.
Yeah, body language, and then body language is more important in communication than actually what you say, right? You're not going to take the time and put punctuation, like the appropriate punctuation in what you say to even think about, okay, how is this coming across? Do I put all of this in all capitalized? Still, even that, is this going to come across as I'm mad, or if I'm just emphatically saying this, So, all of those things get really lost in text communication, period, no matter what the text format is. It's really crazy. I remember when texting first came out, and it cost money per text.
Oh, yes.
Remember that?
I remember that. And the scandal that
Yeah.
popped up afterwards when they found
Right.
out how...
And every cell phone had text messaging, but if you didn't want to pay for it, you just didn't text.
Mm-hmm.
Until like the weekends where it was like free texting or something, right?
Yeah.
And my friends would text me, and I would tell them beforehand, don't text me until 9 p.m. because I ain't trying to pay for no text message. And then they would text me, and it would show up on my bill, and I'm like, ugh. And then they would get mad at me whenever I come to them and be like, look, dude, listen, I told you. Like, I get it. We were having a conversation. You were irritating me about some stuff or whatever. It was taken out of context. Wait till 9 p.m. We can handle it after 9 p.m. Or you can just pick up the phone and call me after 9 p.m. because we're both at home.
Yeah.
I don't want to text you because even at that point in time, I don't really know what you're saying. I don't really know how you're feeling through text message. I don't want to have that conversation with you if we're already having a conversation that was slightly heated in the first place over something that was really frivolous and naive at that point in time.
I tend to call people to get to that point.
Yeah.
Like, if we start texting and it starts getting any convoluted, like, it ends up needing clarification at any point, I just call them at that point.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you have the time to write out a paragraph.
But you don't have time
just
to
talk to me.
Yeah. Just answer the phone when I call you because I don't want to do this, and it can be done right now. We can solve it at this point in time. If we disagree, that's cool. We can agree to disagree. If we agree, let's work it out through a phone call. I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It just got crazy. It's got really crazy. I remember when I was in high school, because I used to DJ in high school, right? And I remember when Circuit City was around, and they used to have. Do you remember when CDs and music only came out on Tuesdays?
Yes, because
And then like I would go.
People would go.
Yeah, and so like every Tuesday I would already have like a predetermined stack of records that I would want to go buy. And I'd go to Circuit City and buy all of them because at the point in time that Circuit City was around, there was a thing where you were either a Circuit City person or a Best Buy person. And if you were one or the other, you wouldn't get caught dead in the other place. And if you did, the people that saw you, that you would say, oh, I'm a Circuit City person. And if they caught you in Best Buy, you didn't want to have that conversation.
I never understood that. I've had people mention that.
No.
And I always thought that was weird. I was like, I went to when everyone was closer at the time.
Listen, it's weird. It's weird. But I experienced it. It was definitely a thing that existed. But it was weird. It was very pointless. But it's a thing that existed. It's kind of like Walmart versus Target.
Yeah, I don't get that either.
It's the same thing.
Yeah,
it's like nothing to get. It's like
it's a store. Some items are cheaper in each one.
Well, it's so bougie that if you're a Target person, you call Target Target.
That's what we're calling it.
Isn't it though?
Yes.
Shout out to my mom who calls Target Target.
That's still work by.
No, she does, man. It's crazy.
Though, but
yeah, but it's man, it's wild. It's so very wild. I don't go to Target so much because sometimes in Target things are more expensive. I tend to go to Walmart, but even then, I don't really like to go to Walmart because I don't like to run into people at Walmart.
Yes, that is the downside.
I don't like to do that because I find myself trying to avoid conversations that I don't really want to have.
Yeah.
I just want to get what I want to get and get out of Walmart.
That's very hard.
It's difficult. Especially if you're staying in Walmart for a significant period of time because you got to hunt for what you're trying to get because you don't go to Walmart very often and you're trying to find it. It's rough.
To help with that, though, they added a system, I remember, that they started implementing before I stopped working there. You could look up an item and it would tell you exactly where it was. It would tell you what side of the row it was on, what 4-foot section it was on, what shelf it was on.
You can do that as a consumer?
Yeah. Like, you look up the item and there's like this code thing, and it was like a code for Walmart, and it basically like coordinated exactly where you had to go to find it.
Well, see, what's bad about that is, if you were doing that in Walmart, you still have to take the time to look it up in Walmart. So you have to like sit at home beforehand and look up everything that you want prior to and get to Walmart and just do.
Yeah, you can plan it out ahead of time.
Yeah, you got to plan it out, man.
Military operation.
Yeah, you gotta
sit
plan
down,
it out.
you list out everything where it is, you figure out where they are, and you figure out the shortest path to get everything and leave.
My gosh. This again sounds like a D&D seminar or campaign or something, just in small form. This is wow. Life is a Dungeons and Dragons game. This is the takeaway from this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's no less convoluted than the people who play like the MOBAs and stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
Some of those strategies are crazy intricate.
Yeah.
Like feints and all that stuff, where they do that to lure people away so they can ambush them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the strategies and stuff get very intricate there.
For sure. So you got of all the states that you've lived in, granted you were in all of those states in different seasons of your life and different age stages of your life, right?
Yeah.
Which one do you think is the most enjoyable, or the one that you had the most pleasure living in? Money aside, taxes aside.
Be a toss-up between Virginia and Texas.
Okay. So why Virginia?
Virginia had amazing coastlines. Like, the beaches were great. Norfolk Bay was amazing. Like, that was a great place. Like,
Okay.
seafood was insanely cheap.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, the Norfolk Station and Chesapeake Bay, rather, I should say. And yeah, seafood was insanely cheap in
Yeah.
that area. It was great. The military base was converted to like this natural museum.
Oh, that's cool.
Thing, and I mean, they had the ships that Columbus they had recreated. Like,
Yeah, Nina Pinta, Santa Maria.
They had all three of them docked.
That's awesome.
We actually got to like tour them, like walk along the ships and everything, and it was pretty.
Is they actual ships or replicas?
Replicas. They're wood. They would survive. Well, I mean, there's a chance they survived, but if so, it's like the ship of Theseus type of thing. I mean, I'm not sure if it really counts anymore.
Yeah, right.
If everything's been replaced twice,
Yeah,
it's not the same
couldn't be
ship.
the actual ship anyway. That's very true. Okay, and what is enjoyable about Texas?
I still like Texas. I mean, just the atmosphere, the people, the fact that you're allowed to defend yourself. That's a huge thing. In Virginia, right the year before we left, a guy was arrested and put in prison for defending his home with a shotgun. The guy broke into his house, he blew the robber's leg off, and he went to jail because the guy sued him for excessive force. He was breaking into his fucking house.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's kind of bullshit.
Right.
And then we moved to Texas, right? The first year we were in Texas, there was a story that popped up. And a guy called the police, and because his house had been robbed while he was at a football game, right? He came back late. While he was on the phone with the police, a truck pulled up that he didn't recognize. He hung up and waited, and the two guys were the same people who had robbed his house, and they were back for a second load of his stuff. He loaded a rifle and a shotgun and waited until they filled their truck with his stuff and like got into their car, walked into the driveway and unloaded both of them into him, killed them both. And he got off. Like, the jury was like, justified.
Wow.
And I went, that's reasonable.
Wow.
They broke into his house. They were on his property. He killed them. That's fair.
Yeah.
And they're like, and people in other places, they would say like that's excessive or whatever. And it's like the social contract only applies when everyone's following the same rules.
Yeah, same rules get bent.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
what I'm
they
saying
do.
is you can't apply it to the same standards to different people when
Right,
some
right,
people
right.
are operating on a different rule set.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. It's very, very true. Okay, so I want to talk about seafood because I just recently found out
Okay.
that I can eat crawfish.
Oh, okay.
I've been eating salmon. Well, you'll understand why it's incredibly nice after I tell you the story, right? So about 6 or 7 years ago, I found out that I could eat salmon. I've been eating tuna since I've been born. When I was a child, my dad likes to fish. My mom loves fried catfish and everything that swims, but specifically southern fried catfish, right? So much to and this is where she gets it from. It's a very traditional. It's a very traditional kind of holistic thing for her. So her and her dad used to wake up almost every single morning and drink coffee and eat catfish. That was their breakfast, right? So just through that memory of osmosis, she learned to really love catfish, right?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't at that point in time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, my mom has always loved catfish. My dad likes to fish. My mom likes to fry the catfish, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, one day we had a fried catfish, for dinner, and I had an allergic reaction to the catfish. I don't really know. I think that because of that reaction to the catfish, my mom assumed that I was allergic to everything that swam except for tuna, because I had already ate tuna and I was fine.
And
right?
you hadn't eaten catfish until that point.
And I hadn't eaten catfish until that point. So my mom, out of safety, because I was a child, and allergies tend to be real bad when people are children, right?
Mm-hmm.
She just assumed that I was allergic to everything that swam except for tuna.
Okay.
Fair enough, right? Makes a lot of sense. She ain't trying to see her son die or nothing like that.
That's a reasonable right.
Yeah. So as I got older, I never ate anything that swam whatsoever, except for tuna, right? And then later on in life, I remember my mom having a conversation, just a dialogue that maybe I overheard or something like that, talking about the lack of iodine that may exist in salmon. I guess because of where they usually swim or not bottom feeders or whatever. I don't really know. I was just excited to hear the dialogue because at some point in time I knew that I was going to be able to try salmon. So when I moved to Nacogdoches in 2015, there's a restaurant down here that doesn't exist anymore. It's called Liberty Bell, that exists on downtown on Main Street. And they have salmon on the menu, and I tried it. And it was not only salmon, but it was really good salmon, right? And so after that, the salmon is like my favorite thing to eat by default ever. If you ever take me anywhere, if anybody ever takes me anywhere and they have salmon, that's typically what I'm going to get, right? So another dialogue had happened about 8 months ago between a friend of mine and my mom, where a friend of mine was like, I think Casey can eat crawfish because it doesn't even swim, it comes out of the mud, right? Because they're mud bugs. And so because of that, they planned this whole thing to where they were going to get crawfish and get Benadryl and a bunch of water just in case I had an allergic reaction. Well, I didn't have an allergic reaction, but I actually did not enjoy the crawfish. However, I understood that it might be different next time I eat crawfish. Now, since it was obviously crawfish season at that point in time, right? And I played a lot of music with local musicians around Nacogdoches. Well, if you play music in Nacogdoches during crawfish season, you're going to get paid in crawfish at some point in time.
Yes.
So, after that, I played music with other guitarists 10 times each and every single time because it wasn't my gig. I got paid in crawfish. So I went home the next time with a huge thing of crawfish, corn, and potatoes. Mm-hmm. And I went home. I sat it all on the table. I turned the TV on to a movie that I wanted to watch, and I pigged out. Best crawfish I've ever eaten in my life. I only ate crawfish 2 times. But it was real good. And then I began to be really interested in crawfish etouffee and all the Cajun things and ways to cook crawfish. And I'm like, okay, I'm going in. So I went in on crawfish as hard as I went in on salmon.
It's like salmon has 6 times the amount of iodine as tuna. One egg has the same amount of iodine as tuna.
I don't know. Then I have no clue.
I was just...
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you pulled up those are interesting facts to know.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's a chance you were just you got food sick or something as a kid.
Could be.
Like just from something random, like not actually the fish.
Could be some, I don't know, seasoning or something like that. I don't know. I mean, for all I know, I could eat fried catfish and be okay now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to take that chance on it, not yet. But you know, when that time comes, I might go hang out with my mom and have a thing of Benadryl and a bunch of water.
Take one bite.
Take one bite and hope I'm okay.
Wait half an hour.
Yeah, I might do that. See what happens. I ate tilapia the other day, I guess like a week ago, at work, and I mean it wasn't the best tilapia because it was like school lunch tilapia, but
Tilapia's not the best fish either.
it's not. So, and I'm not basing my opinion of whether or not I like tilapia off that experience because it's not really valid. I kind of just wanted to see if I was going to die.
Yeah.
But I didn't, so, you know, now I know that I can eat tilapia as well. So,
It's always fun to try new things.
yeah. Well, I hope that you're not going to have an allergic reaction either. But I've always loved to try new things.
But your reaction wasn't life-threatening.
No.
So-
Wasn't anything at all.
Yeah, so
Because I took the first bite and I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait 10 minutes.
when you were a kid, was it life-threatening?
I went to the hospital for a little bit off the crawfish.
Really?
Yeah. Or not off the catfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to like stay overnight?
No.
Did they
wasn't
just
that bad.
They just like give you a shot and let you out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I really don't remember. I was
Yeah.
a kid, but I don't know. But yeah,
It might
So-
be worth looking to see how violent your reaction is.
it may be. So seafood.
Because if it turns out that your parents were just a little bit overprotective or something, it might have been something they could just hand you a pill and you'd be fine.
Maybe. So yeah.
It's less
So
danger.
so seafood is something that definitely intrigues me now because
Love seafood.
I'm trying to eat it all if I can. Trying to make up for 34 years of not being able to eat it.
Speaking of which, sadly, the world's biggest crab can only be eaten in Japan.
Yeah, man.
I was so sad when I found that out.
Man.
Yeah, I wanted to eat one of those ever since I learned about them.
Yeah.
The Japanese spider crab
Yeah.
thing has legs as tall as you.
Stop.
No?
It's that big?
Yeah.
Japanese spider crab.
Japanese spider crab.
Man, I like doing podcasts with you. I get knowledge while I'm doing it.
Okay.
That thing is huge. Okay, I might have to put some pictures of the Japanese spider crawfish on this podcast, and the 6-sided, multiple-sided die,
20-sided.
20-sided, 100-sided die. It's gonna have multiple dies just scrolling across the screen in the editing process. It's gonna be cool, man. I'm gonna enjoy editing this. It's gonna be great. This is gonna be a fun one.
Yeah. He's only a crab. Legs taller than him.
That is huge, dude. That's crazy. That is wild. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I was like, I want to eat one of those. And they're just like, you gotta go to Japan. It's like, what? And they're like, it's illegal to export. And it's like, I hate you. Why?
For sure, man. Cool. Well, hey, Hunter. It's been a cool conversation, man.
Mm-hmm.
We enjoyed it. Hey, guys. Continue to join in and listen to, watch AvenueChat on Spotify. Listen on Spotify. Watch on YouTube. I appreciate your attendance and participation in all things Avenue Speak in my public speaking endeavors. You guys be blessed. Have a good day. Me and Hunter are going to finish up our cigars and chat about life a little bit more. Peace.